Hello, this is Naomi Bennett with Learn Astrology Now. We're doing a forecast for December for the end of the year because it's going to be such a dramatic period of time. So I thought it was worthwhile having a separate broadcast for this. And it may have to be in two parts because I suspect I will go over the 10-minute limit that YouTube requires. So let's talk about eclipses in general because this is an eclipse period that starts with a lunar eclipse in December and then finishes with a January solar eclipse. And during this time we're going to have many other aspects that will magnify and have a series of news events. So eclipses go back as probably the oldest recorded astronomical events all the way back into China, back 4,000 years or more. They have the oldest records that still exist. And they've always been considered very important by governments and kings and court astrologers since the beginning of time because in general you always have major world and news events. Wars begin and end. There can be major reversals of information, surprises, loss of life, and extreme events happen. And so during this time, considering that we're under such very strong aspects, we are still in the cardinal climax that lasts about 5 years, where you have Uranus in opposition to Saturn, but it's square Pluto. And this was considered one of the peak years. In fact, all of the astrologers were talking about a second leg down, another major collapse of the U.S. stock market this last July and August. That didn't happen. We did have some news events. We had very extreme weather and extreme flooding, massive fires across Russia, and I think they said almost 2 million people were displaced in Pakistan with the level of floods. And then we had severe weather across Europe and the United States, so that there was a large loss of life. So we had event after event in July and August, but the stock market did not collapse. However, we did have Bernanke stating in July that he was going to start quantitative easing, which is the new euphemism for devaluating our dollar and getting out of our debt by making our dollar cheaper. And that has started. So we have seen a big rise in the value of gold, commodities, and oil. And then he announced the day after the U.S. elections that there would be more quantitative easing too, and that they had started doing that with a $600 million purchase of Treasury bonds, and that will continue. So I'm thinking what we have is we have a continuing series of negative economic events that have been shoved off and kicked down the road, and there's going to be a point in time in this December where there's going to be enough bad news that they can't ignore completely. So if there was ever a chance of having another collapse in the stock market, it would be during this period in December. But they've been very good about holding things up and propping it up. It's a big house of cards. So with that house of cards, if you remember, we have continuing problems, legal problems with robo-signing of foreclosures in the real estate market, which is freezing up our real estate market, that it is bypassing the law requirements for documentation, and that all the U.S. state attorneys are blocking those foreclosures. They're now talking about trying to do a massive settlement of that. But we'll get more news probably about that in December. But that is holding up the real estate market and therefore suppressing the economy. We're having a great year for retail buying for Christmas, but I don't think we're going to have a lot of announcements of new jobs. I think we're still going to see more layoffs in December because I think we have bad news still on the horizon. And just this week of November the 15th, when I'm recording this, is that there's still threat of more debt problems with Ireland that upset the markets severely on Tuesday. And then they're saying that the debt problems in Greece are much worse than what they had stated before. So we still have ongoing debt problems in Europe and the US that have not been resolved at all. What they've done has been kicking the can down the road and trying to avoid having major collapse, but I think we will still have bad news this coming month, and that's why we're doing this broadcast, is to talk about that. Now, we expected that there would have been a collapse of the stock market in July and August and have another major leg down, and that didn't happen. We have the best probability for that happening again this year by having it happen in December. To have it most exact, because basically the circumstances that happened in July and August are still ongoing and likely to repeat themselves in December. And so this ongoing crisis is going to be having events and coming to a head in December. So I would give you big cautionary warnings about having your money in the market right now. Unless you can stand that level of volatility, there could be some rude surprises during this time. And we had a flash crash, if you remember, last spring. I can't remember if it was in April or March, but we could see levels like that where you have unexpected dips up and down. Yesterday the market was down over 217 points at one point, closed down 176. So we're likely to see some very, very volatile days in the market in December. So if you are a day trader and you can stand that kind of risk, fine, but otherwise I would say go on the sidelines to make sure that you're covered, or put in your stops, but you're likely to see lots of wipeouts of stops during this time. So the ongoing news that we saw all during this year, we're going to see all those delayed events coming up with various news events in December, and we're going to lay that out date by date in the next video, because we'll do the chart where we lay out the exact dates and you can see the chain of events. But we start very early with a lunar eclipse that starts December 21st and a solar eclipse that happens January 4th. But there's a series of other events with the sun and with Mars that will make this a chain reaction all the way through, starting December the 1st and not ending until at least January 10th. So with this, we'll stop as part one, and then we'll go on to the chart and analyze each one of those events, event by event, on the chart video that will be with this as part two.